Re-Zero, Volume 6, Chapter 4, Part 2. Won't let me say the words. He meant to own up to his responsibility, to bear his crime on his shoulders. He meant to accept that all too heavy burden, the responsibility he wished to cast aside and flee from at that very moment, face up to Rem's death. Did he not even have the right to mourn Rem's death and plead for forgiveness? He'd done things thinking it was for Amelia's sake, but she hadn't accepted him. Their feelings were at odds and still remained on different trajectories. Who'd thrown everything away for Subaru's sake, expended her life in heroic fashion as the world repeated itself. And yet, the world had robbed Subaru of the duty to shoulder the responsibility of her life. Time, the world, the witch cult, the white whale. Various obstacles stood between Subaru and what he desired. Why was the world so cold to Subaru, betraying him and all his feelings? That was... Parasu, please return to your room. As Subaru stood dumbfounded in the unoccupied quarters, Ram spoke thusly to him. As Subaru rooted to the floor, Ram, standing beside him, pressed a hand to his back to lead him out of the room and said, "You must be confused about many things because you are tired. Head back to your room and keep dreaming in bed. I have things to do, so I cannot stay with you like this forever." Even though Subaru was beaten down, Ram's decision was strict towards Subaru. She meant to carry out her assigned duties without cuddling him any further. "Back to your room and sleep." Repeating the command one more time as she left, Ram went down the stairs and vanished from view. Certainly, if he slept as she said, he might be able to escape that sense of alienation. It was all a bad dream, surely. He was dreaming, so he would go back to bed to dream. He should just run away, run away, run away. He'd fled all the way to where he stood now. If he kept trying to get away, like he always had, like he always would, if he ran and ran and ran and ran and ran, then what? Subaru murmured, his foot stopping just as he was about to take the stairs down. Judging that he needed to escape into a dream, he dragged his feet over to the stairs. Slightly raising his jaw, Subaru looked at the steps up to the next floor. No matter how far he fled, it'd all be the same. Subaru would have betrayed Rem again. Rem had protected Subaru, gambling with her own life so that he might escape from the white whale. And for what? So that Subaru could finish what he'd started. For his goal of saving the people precious to him from the evil clutches of the witch cult. If he abandoned that objective then and there, letting go and fleeing into his own mind, that's a lot lower than begging for forgiveness. Subaru turned away from the stairs, leaning downward. This time, there was no hesitation in his gait. Subaru put his foot on the first step and went up, not down, because that was where he would find the reason for his return. Stepping firmly upon each step, Subaru slowly headed up. Arriving at the topmost floor, he breathed out as he found the door he had been fighting toward this whole time. When he reached for the doorknob, Subaru realized that he was oddly calm. It seemed unreal how much his heart had quieted down after its frantic pounding when he burst into Rem's room. He wondered if he had actually calmed down, or he had moved beyond stress entirely and sunk so far that he could no longer hear its powerful thumping. But, Rem, lend me your courage. When he voiced that name, Subaru felt his hand become stronger, His strength transferred into the doorknob. He gently opened the obstinate-seeming door. On the other side of the open entryway, a girl was sitting at the desk, looking back toward him as she said, "Subaru?" Subaru heard the chime-like voice calling out his name. He closed his eyes. He finally remembered the deep emotions rushing through his chest that were difficult to put into words, and that he had returned for the sake of hearing her voice. She was a girl with fluttery silver hair, pale skin, and violet eyes. Sadness marred her fleeting, beautiful features. The girl, Amelia, rose from her seat and said to Subaru, "Why did you come back?" It was not the words themselves, but the trembling tone of her voice that robbed Subaru of all thought. Here was Amelia, lacking all strength in her eyes, lips quivering. It had been a while since he had seen her. He felt like she was thinner than when they had parted. Both her voice and her eyes were clouded with fatigue, enough to suggest she hadn't been getting any sleep. Probably been backed into a corner, her spirit worn down by external influences. Thus, Zuru stepped forward, ignoring Amelia's question as he offered her his hand. "Come on, you can't stay here." Subaru's forceful behavior surprised Amelia. She pulled back slightly from him. The original distance between them was restored. Amelia shook her head toward the troubled boy. "Go where?" "No, why?" "Anywhere will work, as long as it's not here. If you're going to ask what it's for, my answer is that it's for your sake. I came back for your—" "This again, Subaru?" Amelia seemed disappointed in his reply as he spoke. Her velvet eyes wandered slightly, glaring up at him through her lashes and cowing him into silence. "Returning all of a sudden, covered in wounds and making everyone worry. Aren't you supposed to be undergoing treatment from Ferris in the royal capital? Why are you here now?" "A lot happened. There's a mountain of things to explain, but I don't have the time to do it right now. Please listen to me. We have to get out of this mansion. I told you, I can't, didn't I? I can't trust you like this, Subaru. I told you." Grudgingly, Amelia shook her head and rejected him with a trembling voice. As a direct continuation of their exchange back in the waiting room of the royal capital without the slightest progress. Subaru had been unable to convey to Amelia his willingness to do anything for her sake, and he had failed to understand why Amelia refused to understand how he felt. But one thing was different from before. "I'll drag you out of here if I have to. In a few days, you'll know I'm right, whether you want to or not. So—" Wait. Subaru. What's wrong? This isn't like you, Subaru. Yet... Just shut up and listen to me!" The instant he shouted, Amelia's shoulders trembled. Before her unbelieving eyes, Subaru's ragged breaths came with just as much force as angry yell, and he glared intensely at her. "You can't stay here. You'll regret it. I know you will. It won't help anyone. It won't save anyone. I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to cry anymore." "What are you talking about? Subaru, I don't understand." "Shut up. If everyone would just... If you do exactly what I tell you, it'll be all right. Everything will turn out okay. It's true. Why doesn't anyone understand this?" Subaru clouded his head, raising his voice, not toward Amelia, but at the irrationality of the situation. No doubt, Amelia could not understand the meaning behind Subaru's angry outburst. This was the only place where he could express these curses aloud. Only before Amelia could Subaru vent about all these senseless things he had encountered and bring all the ugly emotions he had borne with such difficulty. Seeing Subaru plead in a tearful voice, Amelia lowered her eyes in sadness. "I'm sorry, Subaru. I don't get what you're saying. I really can't understand it. Amelia's eyes remained lowered as she softened the tone of her voice in an effort to soothe Subaru's spirit. I want to understand, but even if I could understand with time, I can't give you that right now. There's so many things I need to do. That's why right now it'll all go wrong. Subaru interrupted her show of concern, a few short words, trampling upon Amelia's feelings. Hearing the malice filling his voice, Amelia was in shock, blinking as he repeated the words. It'll all go wrong. You're no good. You'll fail. There's no way you could do it. There's no chance. You're all talk, totally beyond saving. No one can rescue you. You'll just keep doing rash and reckless things. The number of corpses in the pile will be the same. That is your future. Satisfaction filling Subaru's body was pitch black, mean, ugly, and contemptible. With each word that fell from Subaru's mouth sounded in Amelia's ears. Pain in her face let him truly see the effects of jamming his feelings like blades into the weak points of her heart. At that moment, Amelia was forced to pay attention to everything he said. In that instant alone, he took morbid joy in the fact that she could not ignore him. He rejected her determination, laughed off her resolve, callously trampled on her actions, scoffed at her past idleness, and prophesied a completely dark future. As Subaru watched Amelia, stunned by all he said, his heart, quietly, Amelia murmured, "Why?" Grief at Subaru's heartless words, along with the pain in his description of an inescapably dark future, caused Amelia's expression to stiffen. But even then, her violet eyes remained unclouded. Captivated by the haunting, dimmed gleam in her eyes, he watched the world reflected in them. In other words, Subaru himself as seen by her. Then, why do you look like you're crying from so much pain, Subaru? Only then did he realize that a twisted smile had come over him as tears poured out. He knew that everything he'd said had been thrown back in his face. Reflecting upon each and every word which he had crushed Amelia's feelings, eyes running all the while, he realized they amounted to nothing. With everything he said, Subaru had managed only to slice himself to ribbons. Determination, resolve, actions, past, future. Subaru's had been rejected as much as hers. He felt like it was futile, no matter how hard he tried. He knew that he was seized by an urgent need to do something. For what he was struggling against, no idea. He knew only one thing. She brought me this far. No, Rem stayed with me this far. There are things I have to do for Rem. Rem? Subaru anxiously searched his heart for the original feelings that had brought him to where he currently stood. Amelia, listening to his seemingly meaningless utterance, tilted her head slightly. His breath caught. The way Amelia had said her name. It was clearly how people sounded when they were confused. You too. Mm-hmm. You've forgotten Rem too. Not only had her own twin sister forgotten her existence, not only had all traces of her vanished, but the person who was the entire reason for Subaru's return didn't remember her either, even though Rem had staked her life on making it happen. The days she had spent, the time, the feelings, the way she'd lived, all had vanished. Her smile, her anger, her tears, the touches they'd shared. What had happened to all the things that made her who she was, and were firm proof she had lived? All right, I'll tell you everything. Eh? Amelia responded, surprised by Subaru's words. Looking up at her beautiful, refined face, Subaru found anew the source of the emotions that had driven him to such lengths. It was the alternative for Rem and her feelings to vanish into the ether forever. It's better to get everything out, even if it makes me cough up blood. Subaru had decided. He'd reveal it all. He'd tell her the truth about what clouded the depths of his spirit. Amelia, seeing that the look in Subaru's eyes had changed, swallowed stiffly. Standing before her, Subaru put a hand to his chest. His heartbeats were fast. He knew and feared exactly what was about to happen, what the result would be. And pain. Pain enough to drive a man mad. The suffering of those ministrations in his heart, the sensation of it being crushed, his inability to even let out a sound, continuing on, never knowing when it would come to an end. But he had thought about this too. As if I care. I don't care. What's that pain compared to the suffering right now? She couldn't trust him. She couldn't understand him. If he would have to endure the suffering of no one remembering Rem on top of that, mere physical pain paled in comparison. If you're gonna come, then come, damn it. If it's my heart you want, you can have it. Amelia, yes? I've seen the future. I know what's gonna happen. And if you want to know why, it's because I can return by death. The instant he reached the verge, revealing everything, the world indeed came to a halt. As he'd expected, everything gradually slowed, finally stopping altogether. In that instant, the environment lost its color. All the sounds he had heard to that point vanished. The wind, his breath, his beating heart, all grew further and further away, and did not return. With all five senses deserting his mind, Subaru was isolated from the world. Then, as if unable to leave him alone in the solitude, the hands slowly appeared, carrying their unsought benevolence. The black cloud that spawned seemed to slide through the air as it wriggled, shifting to form arms. In past times, only the right arm had the well-defined contours of a limb. As the frequency of the evil hand's occurrence increased, they formed a left hand as well with disturbing speed. Both hands drew near to Subaru, the left stroking his cheek, seemingly fond of him. The right rudely refused to be patient, plunging into Subaru's chest, slipping past his ribs, and gently enveloping his heart. The frightening sensation of that alien limb, softly, gently toying with his heart, coursed through his entire body. Unlike the unimaginable pain inflicted on him previously, the blackness that held Subaru's life in its hands seemed to be craftily manipulating his ultimate fear to break his determination and resolve. The impending agony failing to arrive, a new fear began to quietly take root in Subaru's mind. He'd made his peace with the excruciating discomfort that had sworn to endure it. The evil hands seemed to be mocking Subaru's determination, delivering no more pain to his body and mind than pinpricks, and relying on his imagination to fill the rest. It was that way of inflicting pain, so different from what he'd expected, that made the immobilized Subaru want to scream. But he clenched his unmoving teeth and rejected the urge. He was in pain, afraid, ignorant, but Subaru did not allow that suffering to affect his spirit. If he failed, he would gain nothing. If he failed, he would never be forgiven. In a world where no one remembered that Rem had ever existed, Subaru had nowhere left to beg forgiveness for his responsibility in her death, save the confines of his own soul. If the hand wanted to inflict suffering, he would let it carve as much into him as it pleased. But that determination was the one thing that would not shatter so easily. Subaru glared at the evil hand toying with his own heart, holding his breath as he waited for the inevitable moment. The hand made no move to do so. If it could do the deed any time, it could also delay it as long as it wished. In that world of stopped time, all he could do was wage a war of attrition until his mind was worn away. Even if Subaru's determination held firm for the moment, it would eventually falter, and his spirit would be subsumed and broken. If that's what it thought, it had another thing coming. He'd endure the agony, no matter how many hours or days it might take. He hadn't died over and over for nothing. If it wasn't going to kill him, he'd endure anything mere pain had to offer. Such was Subaru's resolve. Suddenly, something began to animate that stilled world. All traces of the looming pain, of which he'd received only a preview, vanished from the world. Subaru and his resolve were left intact as sound, color, and time returned. A flood of sounds, his breathing, his heartbeat, moving things in the world, swirled around Subaru as if that other realm had spat him out in derision. Perhaps the evil hand had judged that it was futile in the face of Subaru's obstinate resolve. Like hell, thought Subaru. His repeated suffering at those hands led him to scoff at that motion. Even then, he felt the black cloud's right hand softly grasping his heart. If it squeezed, Subaru would that very moment be. At that point, a doubt crept into Subaru's thoughts. Subaru had a firm memory of this abominable right hand touching his heart. What had the left hand been doing during that time? At first, it touched his cheek, but after that... Before he could find an answer to his question, Amelia, standing before him, seemed to murmur something. Her voice roused Subaru to his senses. He recalled the rest of the sentence he started before time had stopped. Though his sudden release from the nightmare had thrown him off, and violating the taboo would bring no further price, he needed to concern himself with it no further. He'd reveal everything, starting with what lay moments into the future. Let Subaru, everyone, get the world they hoped for. Finally, his determination to see that through would bear fruit. A moment before he could, Amelia's body abruptly leaped forward towards Subaru, who was standing just in front of her. Subaru instinctively reached a hand out to catch her. Her breath caught a little at the moment, warm touch against his hand when... Splat. Splat, splat, splat. Me. Leah. Splat, splat, splat. Spurt. Amelia made strange sounds while she embraced him. An enormous amount of blood poured from her mouth. Where had the left hand gone while the right was touching Subaru's heart? Amelia rested her head on Subaru's shoulder, continuing to cough up blood. The sheer amount coming out dyed half of Subaru crimson as her body grew lighter. Stop. What? Wait. She lifted her head, seemingly trying to stop the blood she was heaving up, but in that instant, her listless head dropped. She slid down his shoulder. Her lifeless gaze told him everything he needed to know. Right then, before Subaru's eyes, Amelia's life. A scream rang out. He screamed and howled enough to tear his throat apart, as if that would let him forget everything. If it were so, he wanted it to break at that very moment, to claw at it and rip it out with his own hands. Amelia's limp body was still growing lighter within his arms. The blood wouldn't stop flowing out of her. Subaru's body turned redder, redder, and redder. While the right hand had been touching Subaru's heart, the left hand had reached for Amelia's. His determination, his resolve, his actions, his past, and his future had all been stomped down and mocked. His stubborn determination, the resolve he had only just decided would never be broken, had just been smashed to pieces, and Supranotsky plunged into abyss of despair. His scream reached higher and higher, never fading. It had finally come to this. Subaru had killed Amelia.